So Jupiter in Leo is expanding our ability to perceive the universal source, the returning forces in the universe, expanding our ability to perceive love. And where it starts is finding inner love. You know, Leo can wear this big mask. Leo can be so full of ego. And the larger the ego, the more insecurity under the surface. The more that Jupiter in Leo reaches for an inner sense and understanding of loving self and finding love from the inside first, the quieter they become and the more they just radiate unconditional universal love. You know, it reminds me of the guru, the female guru Amma, A-M-M-A. She's known as, I think, the hugging mother or the hugging guru or something like that. Just radiates out universal love, recognizing that energy is stronger than any material good, any possession, any outer lover. Many of us aren't there yet. We have to start with that inner love first. And I heard my lover breathe. Were you wanting to say something? Oh, maybe he muted, unmuted.
I am muted.
I heard you say ah, and if you're speaking, you cut yourself off.
I was muted there, but yes, I can. I can certainly
Amen.
perceive that finding inner love is the most important part of this process, Jupiter and Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Because then then when you do create, it's going to feel more congruent to you and the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. Yes. I mean, this is, again, this is one of the deepest lessons of Jupiter and Leo. Expanding our ability to perceive universal love coming from source energy and working to find it from within ourselves first. And then we find inner love reflected outside of us. Not only in intimate relationships, but in all kinds of ways. And yes, especially in intimate relationships. Leo squares Taurus and Scorpio. Taurus self-reliance and Scorpio merging with another on the deepest levels possible. Leo's halfway between that. And so we can either go for the Taurian self-reliance and the Scorpio deep merging, or we can go for the possessiveness of Taurus and the codependency of Leo. So that's all going to be reflective of how much we are recognizing I love me. And one of the things to realize from the perspective of natural laws and principles, all you got to do is look around you. Nature is abundant. There is more than enough love to go around in the universe. And this same principle also applies to creativity. Jupiter in Leo is going to be about recovering our inner wounded child. Wherever we have been wounded as a child in this life and as child in past lives, those are going to be areas within us in which we are hypersensitive. We're on guard because it is a wound, because it is a trauma, because there is karma there, because we weren't loved, we weren't fulfilled. We're going to be extremely sensitive in that area. Most common example I could give you is if a child suffered sexual abuse, either by the parent or by a stranger or by an extended family member. You're going to have someone who is hypersensitive around anything that even smells like the slightest little bit of sexual energy. And so Jupiter is going to help us become conscious of this in Leo, of where each of us have carried our own inner wounds. Now, with Jupiter in Cancer, those wounds as a child had a strong emotional flavor, were we nurtured in our early environment. And we could have been nurtured by our parents quite well in our early environment, but as we grew up, as we became middle school, preteen, young adult, we could have experiences in life with or without our parents in which we were wounded in some way. And so what we are working with is to become conscious of that, to first of all recognize the wounds from our parents and others. And then as an adult, most of us listening to this call are adults to some degree or manner, biologically, chronologically, or metaphysically. But as we've moved into adulthood, it's there for us to look at those wounds in a new light, to look at those wounds from the deeper, broader understanding that we now have as an adult. We might recognize that our parents were just as wounded or even more wounded than we were. They were doing the best they could do. And now that we are an adult, it's for us to learn how to parent ourselves and heal those wounds. So there's going to be an evolution of parenting of ourselves and our own children. Leroy?
Well, this is so perfect coming off of an entire year with Jupiter in Cancer. We've all been somewhat mired in a little bit of our emotional muck if we haven't worked through some of these issues around parenting and the hypersensitivity of our inner child wounds. So it's really perfect that it's set up in this way astrologically because, one of the key words that we'll be reminded of throughout the presentation tonight about Jupiter, particularly Jupiter in Leo, is enthusiasm. We're not used to living our lives in a hyper state of enthusiasm, and yet that's exactly what this merging of these two archetypes is really all about. And so to live in that state is so abnormal today that essentially it gets overlooked or it can seem to be a little fake, particularly if you're still hiding some of these inner child wounds, the inner wounded child hiding underneath the tree in the playground perhaps, or something like that, as you look inside of your own reconciliation with our past. But enthusiasm is where we're going to with this archetype, so it's all good news.
Oh, many words like that. Enthusiasm, excitement, energy. E-words coming to mind, but just that ability to find desire and joy in life again is the natural expression of Leo. We're meant to be moving outward again. We're meant to be taking Jupiter in Cancer and go forward from that self-reliance on a deep emotional level and create. And sometimes we might have to do some, again, healing of the child in order to get there. We may have our own children with lessons to learn that way. We may be adult children learning the lessons with our elderly parents in some way as well.
Another key word for, Jupiter type people could also be aspirations. As we get to this state of inner joy and release all these wounds, Sagittarius ninth house is a lot about goal-oriented behavior, so what are we aspiring to as we're working through this next year of Jupiter and Leo energy?
Yeah, that's a good one too. Well, but before we move on, again, Jupiter in Leo is going to have us addressing karma with children, both in our individual soul cycle and soul karma and evolution and collectively. And Jupiter in Leo is really about taking care of the least of us, and that means all children. Is it any surprise that we have this immigration issue going on in the United States? Is it any surprise that as a plane was shot down, we're so touched by the amount of children that were on that plane? As we look at the war going on in, Gaza with Israel and Palestine, is it any surprise that it's the children that are getting our attention? So over this next year, you can look at all kinds of issues around children being in the news.